grass.
Okay, everybody, I'm starting the live stream, just so
Okay.
that.
Before you do, if I yawn, it's nothing personal, I'm exhausted.
Oh, I did, it is started, just so you know, in
okay.
case that changes what you're gonna say.
Okay, no, and if I'm, and I got an RSV shot yesterday, and I don't know if how I feel is from the shot or just being tired, so if I feel peaky and get up and go, don't take it personally.
Yeah, I guess it's the same thing, the same thing happened to me this week.
Did you?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, achy chills.
I'll follow you to the door.
Okay.
That makes me not wanna, is that the same as a flu shot?
No,
No.
I talked to somebody that just got a flu shot that was like debilitated.
I know 4 people who got my neighbors actually got called up to COVID shot, they all have COVID.
Well, I had a COVID shot. I had it.
You had the shot?
yeah. I got the COVID and the flu, and I
Yeah, I
definitely
don't-
felt achy and chills, but I don't know which one.
Maybe
Right.
And so this is the third one.
Out of state.
They always need to.
Oh, I've been trying to convince myself to go and do all that, but every time I talk to somebody, I'm like, oh, I need to hear the
It's
pitch in favor of doing it again, because
it's better than getting COVID.
that's
It's
the spirit.
6:30, we'll roll, me and Sarah's benefit.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, this is the Nicholas Hall Waste Corporation Board of annual meeting. Tonight's, are we live?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
There is a hybrid option if people are interested in the Zoom meeting link that's on our agenda, which can be found on the Nicholas Hall Waste website. And with that, we'll start into our annual board meeting first, and then go into our regular meeting right after it. So the first items, 3 items on our annual items, the first of which is election approval of officers of the corporation. First, we have to nominate and approve chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer. So I'll take nominations for chair.
I'll nominate Eric Boucher for chair.
Second,
Discussion. All those in favor?
Thank you.
Opposed? Vice, I'll let you take over after this person. Nominations for vice chair. I'd like to nominate currently as vice chair.
second,
Favor? Secretary and treasurer? Who is the current secretary and
I
treasurer?
was secretary.
Who is?
I was secretary, Allison's treasurer.
Okay, nomination for secretary first.
You want
No volunteers from other towns?
maybe we all should remind ourselves of the role of the secretary
Doesn't
under
do
our
much.
bylaws.
That's it. That's
Don't
really
know
it.
that anything's jumping out.
Why don't you stay with Eric? You can both.
Okay.
So I just nominated Eric for second.
Solve that problem.
No, second, that's a record. And all those in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Treasurer. Allison, you want to continue to do it? I'll nominate Allison.
Second.
All those in favor?
Thank you.
You want to take over? It's up to you.
Establish.
Go ahead.
I can do this. So number 2 then, establish the weighted votes for the fiscal year 2023 to 2024. Just my PDF. Right here.
I move that we approve the established weighted votes in our packet for fiscal 23-24.
Second.
All those in favor?
Unanimous. And
Who's taking minutes?
sure.
Hmm?
You want to take a minute?
No, I said who's taking the minutes?
Oh, that's a,
Beth will
Remote?
do, yeah, she'll do them,
Oh.
she'll do them after.
Okay.
that's why it's gonna be extra important to make sure that the live stream audio is good. So I'll maybe just check that in a second, but if everybody can do their part and try to only really stick to this only speaking one person at a time thing. Otherwise the owl starts to, tries to decipher on its own who's speaking, and but we'll just take turns. Eric, you're gonna be really
Okay.
heavy-handed, right?
Sure. All right, so number 3,
Mhm.
be schedule review and approval for 2023 and 2024. I believe these were already put in place in June, when we started them.
We move to accept, the board approve the Midco Solid Waste Corporation fee schedule 2023-24 as in our packet.
Second.
And motion to approve, unless there's discussion.
Yes.
All right, now we can move on to the regular board meeting. Are there any public or director comments? And please limit those to what is not on the agenda tonight. Not seeing any? Is there one on there?
Director comments have to be made.
I think that's the manager, right?
What?
Okay, all right,
Yeah, we were gonna do your number 3.
yeah.
So we can move on to review and approval of the August 30th, 2023 meeting minutes. Is there any discussion on those?
Move to approve the minutes of August 30th, 2023.
Second?
All those in favor?
Unanimous.
Unanimous again. All right, and now our facility managers reports. Okay, that is
Yeah.
all you.
So, most of my comments that I have for tonight are in the manager's report, but I do want to just kind of go over something that's going on at the landfill right now that's got me a little concerned, but I think we've got it figured out. So I drew this little photograph, or this little cartoon, or whatever you want to call it, schematic. And this is basically the leachate system. This isn't the sewer, this is just the leachate. So I'll go over kind of how it all works, and then I'll go over the problems. So right now, we pump water out of this well, and it comes out of this piece right here, which is a pitless adapter. And it flows down to this structure that's in the landfill, which is just a big cement base structure, basically, big round split structure. And it's like almost 35 feet deep down in there. It's really deep. So any kind of work in this area becomes confined space work. It's a little more complicated. You can't just go down there because there's a hazard.
Where's that located?
This is kind of behind the leaf pile of the metal and the mattresses. It's kind of like right behind there on the slope of the landfill. You can't barely see it.
So it's actually in the landfill?
This is in the landfill.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is kind of the slope of the
Yeah,
landfill.
all right, I'm with you.
So then it goes down in here, and it has some old fittings down in here that are all rusty and nasty looking. And it used to go in a different direction, I think, at one point in time, but that was been capped off, and it just kind of comes out here underground, and then basically goes past the corner of the last recycling container, and then heads over to the odor control building, where it goes into another structure over here that has a manifold in it that has a cap and it's bolted down, so you can't really get in it over here either. And this is another confined space. And then it goes into this building, and then goes into the building, and then kind of goes through the thing that totalizes or keeps track of how much water we pump. And it goes back out to a structure out here, which is another confined space, and then gravity feeds to the kind of the corner right where the exit road begins, and then goes out the facility exit to Camden wastewater and runs through the town's infrastructure. Another part that's connected to this is, these are the hoppers. There's this drainage trench that's made to basically collect any of the leachate that's generated from the MSW operation. It goes to a sump, which has an alarm in it. It gets, then kind of gravity feeds over to here, and occasionally we have to pump this out to clean it periodically, like once or twice a year. So all of this portion right here is pressurized. It's a forced main, they call it. This is all a gravity system, okay? So what's happened is we had a power outage, which I wrote in the manager's report about 2 weeks ago. And when we went to turn everything back on, we turned everything back on, everything looked okay, but we weren't getting any flow reading over here. So we said, oh, something's gotta be wrong. So played around with the controls, I called the guy that had put the control system in, and he's looked remotely, and he says, everything looks all right, I just can't figure it out, I don't know what's going on. And we looked at it too, and it all looked okay, but there was no water, no leachate showing up. So then I called Frank Haggerty, and he came over, and he looked it over, and what we have right here is a standpipe, and this is set up for fighting fires and also for watering the top of the landfill for dust control. And we cracked the valve up there, and when we did that, when the pump was running, we activated the pump. I shut everything down before this, because I didn't want to blow the variable drive. And we cracked the valve up here and turned the pump on, and water starts coming out here. But it's not coming out over here. Okay, so that means you got everything working mechanically in the well, which is a good thing, but something's blocked between here and here. And this is a lot of real estate, a lot of line, and there's no way to really get to it.
We had a problem just before the odor control building.
Yeah.
We dug that up. I don't know.
Right over here, I saw that.
Yeah, we dug that up, and there was a collapse in the line.
Yeah, there was a fern coat that had collapsed, yeah, and I got that information. So what I did was first I went down here and we jetted this area out from here to here. There's all kinds of debris and stuff that was in the line over here. And I couldn't get into this area from here to here because it's confined space, and we just didn't have anybody confined space from Camden wastewater that could camera that line. So I said, all right, well, my next option is you always pick the least expensive thing first to kind of pick away at this and figure out what's going on. So today we got a compressor, and we made some adapters, and we pressurized this line right here with air, trying to blow out what we think is, I think that there's an obstruction in this area right here. So when we did that, we didn't remove the blockage, but when we let off the valve, we used to have back pressure after accumulated pressure. It turned the valve closed, we disconnected everything, let it off, and it just came back out. And then we turned the pump on, and it blew out some of this you remember a year ago, we had this whole thing that was clogged up basically and failed, and we pulled this whole upper column out, and it was completely restricted from top to bottom, and the pump was completely filled with this coffee ground looking material. Well, when we did that, we cleaned that all and we pulled this thing all the way out on the landfill, we had it pressure washed and jetted, and got it all clean, and we put a new pump head, new wet end of the pump, and it all worked great. But we never cleaned this area right here because this is all underground. So we would have to dig this up to get to that. So it was working, so we said, all right, don't mess with it. We're putting the well in. It isn't worth messing with. Well, I'm pretty sure that this area right here has the same thing as what's in this area, or it was in this area, and I plugged it up. And I think it's just when the power went out, probably there's a little bit that was in here, and it fell down in, and then it blew into the end of the hole. That was just a little bit, and blocked it off. So my next move is I can do one of two things. I can hire somebody to come in here and do confined space entry and try and go this way, or I can try and dig this back up, which is about 12 feet down, break the union right here, and then I'm gonna have Interstate jet this. And if they jet it and this is restricted, I've solved the problem. If I don't, I'm gonna have them jet from here to here, and then I'll clear that portion, try it. If that doesn't work, then I'll have to do some confined space entry and go from here to here. So this is my plan of attack. I think this is gonna work. This is my next move. This is where we're at. But we're at 102 on the elevation as of today, and the higher end limit is 110.
107.
107 actually, yeah. 107, so 5 feet we've got to play with. So we don't have a lot of time left. So I have to move quickly to get this fixed.
So, but you don't know for sure, why can't you get into that right there?
So that's 30 feet deep, and you need confined space entry people to do it. And you gotta have the people that run the jet be able to do that too. They'll have to be trained, you gotta have a tripod on the top. These people aren't certified to do that.
But can you see that water is, I know you can't go down in there, but do you see leachate flowing in that, whatever we're calling that thing?
No, because it's all within pipes.
It's all
It's
piped,
all piped in, there's nothing
it's not
open.
open.
It's not like a sewer where it's cut out, and there's a trough.
It's not a tank,
You can go in it though.
You can go in it, but it's all piped,
but
it's
you're
all
looking at pipes,
enclosed.
you're looking at pipes and valves, you're not looking at.
Yeah, there's no open system there, it's all closed. It's a closed system.
Okay, I've looked in there, but
It's all pressurized, so if it was pressurized and this was open, it would be blowing around everywhere.
that's a good point.
So my money is on this, and I'm pretty sure this is what it is, but I won't know that, but I can go this way, and then I can go this way when I break this union, and that's pretty easy to do. We have an excavator right there, because we're ready to do the cell development next move. So we're gonna be working in this area anyway, so it's not a big deal to dig this up, break the union, jet it, and I think we'll be good. So I just wanna give you a heads up on where we're at. The DP's been notified, and that's what we're working on.
Very interesting.
Is there any way to pump it with just hoses until,
yeah.
like, while the facility's closed?
Okay,
Just
so
run across the, as an emergency?
Is there any way that you could, with a fire truck and hose, and would that work? Or?
So in the back of my mind, I've got a plan C, we'll call it.
Yeah,
And if none of this works in this section and I can't get somebody, I talked with Frank Haggerty, he can do confined space on that tank. So I'll be able to get him in there and go from that section to the odor control building if I have to. If that doesn't work, I am going to see that riser that goes up on top that I said the water's coming out of. That basically has a cam fitting on it, and I'll just put a lay flat hose on that, run it down the edge of the landfill in the ditch line, and I'll have to cross the roadway towards the recycle building, and there's a manhole right there, and I'll dump it in there, and I'll just pump it. And that'll be what I'll do, but we won't be able to send traffic over that.
yeah,
That'll be the hard part. So I don't want to do that until the last minute.
yeah,
So that's my game
Good
plan.
luck.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's kind of exciting.
not really.
Yeah.
No, it is actually. You
It's
gotta
bound
give,
to happen at some point. That
Oh,
whole, you can see the whole area around the recycling is caving in.
yeah.
Huh.
So Allison's got a good point, and this is just one of those things that has been neglected. And I don't think we've ever jetted that whole system.
Yeah.
So if I fix this, I should follow through with the rest of it and jet the whole line and clean it out the whole way, because I'm sure there's stuff in there.
Yeah.
And when they jet it, then I'll camera it. It's actually a law that you're supposed to do that annually. People overlook it, and the DEP is so new that they don't really even realize that you're supposed to do it, so no one really dings you on it. But a good inspector will require you to do a leachate, cammering of that line from one end to the other, make sure you have no leaks.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about that, just an associated comment real quick. The Y sewer line, Jim, were you around when they did that? No. Because it's interesting to look.
I was around, but I wasn't here.
Okay, yeah, same with me, I think. But the Y has that sewer easement that goes from the Y all the way across, like, the recycling area, all that stuff down to the manhole where the hoppers are. And you can see, I've taken drone shots there, and you can kind of see some settling in the road and just kind of like but I wonder if we ever have to, we were thinking about what if we had to dig up ours, but what if the Y ever has to dig up theirs, or, because that's all just that gut, that we'd already determined was kind of porous, and so stuff is bound to.
It's that area that's settled the most on the landfill side of the recycling containers. That part that keeps on getting lower and lower. That Y,
Right.
that Y line goes right under there.
Oh,
And I don't know whose responsibility it is to fix that if it goes bad. Is
Wow.
it the Y or is it the facility?
To why, I'd say.
The Y, yeah, but it would still be really
Sure,
impactful for us.
But we better have that it's good to have that answer. We should make them camera that line, because we don't want to have them spring something on us at the last minute that they gotta dig the whole area around.
Yeah.
They should eventually have that out of there, I would think, because if that just continues to settle.
Okay,
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the compactor, or you want to hold off on that? With that price
that's
saying,
the agenda item.
is it? Well, I know we had the,
It's not
isn't it?
I don't think so.
I don't think it was on the agenda itself. I know we're talking about the trip for the fire truck later, but.
Pictures of it.
So the compactor, I talked about that in the manager's report.
Right, yeah.
So what's going on with, I think it's compactor one. So when we had that, we have an annual inspection every year, and these things are really tender. I don't know if anybody's looked at those, but they're old and they're
Yeah.
tender, okay? And we got one that's really bad, and that's number one. So we replaced the wiper bar on that, but when we were underneath there looking at the framing of all this, and basically it's just a ram that goes back and forth with a big hydraulic cylinder, but it's all supported by rails and a framework, and that framework, you can imagine, with all this juice and stuff from the commercial hoppers, dump it in that one hopper, because that's where the commercial people dump. There's a lot of food waste. It's eating away at that thing, and it's really, really bad. So I looked into the price of buying a used one versus a new one, and the used one, I could have bought it available, which I wouldn't have just bought it, but I was looking into it. It was only like $15,000 less, and it was smaller. So I didn't think that was a good move, buying a used piece of equipment that was smaller. To buy a new one, I think it says it was
60,000.
60,000. The guy that builds them and sells them, he proposed that, and he can put that on order, but what I'm suggesting is that during the budget season, that's something that we invest in. And then what I want to do is, once we replace one, we'll take one out, give it to him, let him completely rebuild it, and then in the next budget year, replace two with one, and then do that until they're all been replaced. That's the most feasible, economic way to do it, other than a big major overhaul of the whole area. And I don't think anybody wants to do that right now. So that's kind of planning ahead. I'm just kind of floating it out there so everybody knows about it before we get to that point, because this is gonna need to be done or you're gonna be in a pickle.
All right. Anything else for the manager's report? Any
Well,
questions? Yeah, go ahead.
The hybrid recycling collection effort has begun,
Mhm.
but it appears that it's stopped.
I don't think it's stopped. I think it's slowed down, but it really has reduced the amount of trips that we have to make to get those containers moved in and out.
Well, I have used it a couple of times, and why, I thought we were trying to reduce the amount of cars over by where our containers are.
We're trying to reduce the amount of times we have to empty the frequently emptied items, which are mixed paper and cardboard, because those are the ones that we do, like a double cardboard on a Saturday, and I think sometimes a double paper. And I think I had told you that those are about an hour apiece from start to finish. That's about 4 hours of downtime on a weekend. So if we can send people to that, so what I've instructed people to do at the gatehouse is when they say, oh, do you just have cardboard and mixed paper? Go down this way. If you have other items that, because we're not collecting every single thing on the hybrid area. We'd have to make more holes in the walls further on. This is just like a one-step, kind of like a small step.
You can do
So-
almost everything. There's only
Well, there's only a couple
It's
things.
only like
that-
newspaper that's not
Yeah,
there.
and so
I just put that on the
they're
newspaper.
supposed to be filtering that at the gatehouse and sending more people. And if they start seeing it stack up, because it's only one lane, they send people back to the other area. So that there's kind of like some discretion of the gatehouse person, but the objective is to try to limit the amount of times you have to go back and swap out that can with cardboard and mixed paper. And this is really to show how it works and to prove that it's worth investing in to make it better. And that was what it was never meant to completely replace the other operation.
Understood.
Yeah.
It's just, I think, and maybe I'm completely wrong here, and I hope somebody proves me wrong, but the majority of our customers don't just have cardboard. They're recycling as well. So that's creating a bottleneck. You go in there first, then you've got to come back around and pull in to do your recycling of plastic goods. And the 3 times that I did it,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not gonna use this until it's better thought out, because it was very busy.
Yeah.
I dumped my cardboard, but then getting back in line caused a safety concern.
You're not supposed to be going back in line if you're going in there. You're supposed to, like, that's what I was saying. The gatehouse is supposed to be instructing people oh, you just have cardboard, go over here.
They
You know what I
have
mean?
plastic,
Okay,
when I
so
go there,
that's
there's
what was
been plastic.
missing in the equation.
Yeah, there are some bins out front that have the plastic. I think there's like
There's
one,
everything
there's
there.
one item that's not there. I
It
think
was only-
Number 2 is not there,
Yeah, number 2 is the one that's not there.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
the
guess
most
maybe
popular
they did.
one.
Yeah,
Oh.
we're having and
Yeah.
we're trying to figure out what we're gonna do with number 2. We were thinking of putting it kind of where the compactor is and making another hole in the wall. That was our game plan for number 2. We are short number 2, and that's a defect in that process.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm having them instruct people when they get through there to say, oh, you got cardboard, mixed paper, go down here. If you have anything else, go to the normal area.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people, believe it or not, that they just have cardboard and they have paper. I mean, a ton of them. Most people, not most people, but a lot of people that generate a lot of cardboard, you know, that's where we send them.
But they're not telling people that, just so you know. Like,
Well,
maybe they have before.
It's something
but
I have to
they've never told me
reiterate
that.
with the person at the gatehouse, because he's not listening, and I know that the other people are telling people that when they go through, because I've been watching it happen, but it's like anything, I have to keep on them about letting people know, because you have to interact with everybody to tell them that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's.
Sometimes they don't.
Sometimes they don't, and it's not uncommon for that to happen, so I have to stay on them about, you know, I really want you to continue to tell people if they have cardboard to go in this direction.
Yeah.
And I say it, and I can't tell you how many times I stand there and I wait and I watch, and it all works well when I watch.
Yeah.
You just have to work in the gatehouse.
So, also, I
I'm
had,
sure when it gets busy, they try to.
Well, yeah, but it's
everybody
a
through.
simple thing, hey, if you got if you just got cardboard, go over here. You know, you don't have to get into a long dialogue with anybody. You can usually look in the truck, and if they got a mound of cardboard, you can go there, right?
Yeah.
But it's not perfect, I'm not saying it is, it's like a baby step
Yeah,
to getting there. We didn't spend.
well, I never thought it was gonna be perfect, it was a
No,
trial.
right.
I get it, I just had a question on that.
You're
because
right.
It just didn't make any sense to me.
I agree with you, we're missing number 2, and in hindsight, I think we should have split cardboard up maybe, but when you throw it inside, it becomes a problem. Because you really want to put it where it goes, you don't want to mix the things up inside, because then it's another problem.
Yeah.
So part of the issue is we don't have all of the stalls on that side of the building, and you gotta have the stalls on the opposite side as an accumulation area if a stall's worth isn't a bale's worth. So sometimes you need to put 2 stalls
Yeah,
before you get bales
Yeah.
worth. So you gotta push it over to the other side and fill the other stall up, and then when you get those 2, you make a bale.
Mm.
So it's a little bit of tweaking. It'll get there. We're just taking our time. We're not putting a lot of money into this.
no,
You know, it's been I think it's working well for the amount of effort we put into it.
Mm,
And we just gotta emphasize the things that we're trying to collect in that location right now.
mm.
And then we gotta add on to it and put in the number 2. And then when that starts working good and we can send more people in that direction, then we need to make the decision, okay, are we gonna put 4 lanes through here, move the scale? That's kind of the game plan.
All right.
I do have another question on the manager's report. The regeneration program, obviously, we're scaling it back because of winter hours and everything. And the total amount, 4595, which is great, but what does the guy do in addition to the regeneration?
He works the line, and he worked more in the regeneration building this year than he had been normally. I'm gonna make that more of a part-time kind of thing in the summertime again, instead of being in there the whole time, because it's just a little too much time being in there. Because there's a lot of stuff that accumulated, and we only sold X amount of things, so we have to kind of meter that a little
Yeah.
bit. We need to take a little bit, and I really want a little bit more organization that's going on with the collection of the things. And, you know, it should be there for a shorter period of time, and it should be repaired. And if it isn't repaired, it should go in the hopper, you know what I mean? You can't just keep on collecting stuff. You gotta stay on top of this. And again, this is a tweaking thing and continuous improvement type of thing. And I talked with John about it, and I said, you know, we need to clean this area up. You know, we're gonna scale back the operation for the winter, and then the next summer, we're gonna tweak it a little bit more so that there's less collecting and more turning over, and there's gonna be a little less time working in that area. You can't have someone working there almost the whole summer. They gotta be able to move out and do some of the other things.
Yeah.
Fill in for breaks or do something like that. And we talked about that, Vinnie and I, so.
Maybe it's a good place to find a couple of interns from the mid-coast.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
can't think of the name of the school.
But I will say, it is one of the more popular things at the facility, and people really like it. And it's saving a lot of that stuff from being thrown out. And the other thing is that it's given a lot of people that don't have a lot of income a good way of getting a bicycle and a lawnmower. Because you can't get a lawnmower for 30 or for 50 bucks anywhere, you know, it's just, that's kind of.
All right,
Thank you.
excellent. Moving on. We now have the actual waste contract proposal from MSW, 3-year contract. Would you like to discuss on some of that, various points? Or does anybody
have an hour?
Is there the,
I know.
It's a little
Briefly.
All good in there.
It's terrible.
Can I make a comment? So, I talked with Bob a little bit about this off the record, and he suggested that this goes through legal before we kind of really make any kind of decisions about it. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be discussing it at the meeting, but just so you know, I have legal looking at it to make sure that there's no problems with it also. So it's not complete yet, but yeah.
Have you read it?
Not all of
I
it.
did.
Yeah.
There's much more than legal problems in this thing. There are operational problems in this contract, which you would expect when somebody else's attorney drafts a contract.
Yeah.
The first time ever, by the way. And it's a very good attorney, by the way, you know him well. But I could give you a dozen items that need to go beyond legal. They go to operational.
Yeah.
And they don't, some of it conflicts with, I believe, the proposal. But I'm not sure. My point is, and I don't want to get into all that detail, but if I do, somebody's got to go through all that. It's going to take time. How much time do we have, Dave? Before we have to make a decision?
well, it's 0 if you want to believe what they said.
I don't,
When does
Sorry, I'll let Dave answer what he
Norwich
thinks.
Walk end? When do we have to renew?
we next year, yeah, right around, I think it's July,
Oh, so it's July 1?
yeah. We have some time.
Okay.
The risk, of course, is not a risk, but, you know, they told us that we needed to make a decision, but I don't think they're gonna say, no, we can't go with them. I just think that the terms could change. They could say that offer was good for a certain period of time, and if you want another offer at this point, they're probably gonna give us another offer.
Waste management is the one putting pressure on us. I think MRC is fine with us taking
MRC
more
said,
time, because
didn't give us any.
but
I see a lot of time in contractual, financial accounting, one bundle, and operational. It has to be resolved. And then you have to reflect that in the contract. I'm not even sure of some little elements. Dave, for example, does this numbers for MRC, is that right? I call them WC, they call themselves in here, but the numbers in here, does that assume it's going to Norwich Walk?
There's two scenarios in there. One's going with waste management, one's going with.
Yeah, but the waste in here, the price of the waste with MRC, are these numbers assuming it's going to Norwich Walk?
Those are our rates. Those are the proposed rates that they gave us.
The reason I ask you that, because the contract, for example, it says that if they have any acceptable waste coming to the facility and for the reasons which would mean about anything, they decide to divert it,
Bypass.
we have to pay it.
Yeah, so
We have to pay it. Is that in these numbers?
I'd have to ask that question. I'm guessing.
I don't want you to answer that, because it's not fair. What I'm saying is, these are the kind of operational issues that are not legal. This is one,
did you say unacceptable waste or acceptable waste?
acceptable. I'll read it, it says,
and they don't even explain what that is.
no, they do. The deliveries, if the company then determines in its sole discretion that accepting acceptable waste would interfere with operations or maintenance, or the process is downtime, or existing inventory of acceptable waste is too high, then that waste will not be accepted and sent to backup. And a customer will pay for that.
That's very common, And they do that all the time, it's called bypass.
Yeah,
And it's part of your,
But
it's part of your.
That's what they're doing now.
Exactly.
So, again,
Your rate doesn't change. You don't get a different tipping rate because they're bypassing. Bypassing,
then why does it say that we're gonna pay?
they just want to know that we're not going to run your waste through the facility, we're going to bypass and go straight to the landfill. That's what they're telling you.
And they're gonna charge you for that.
They're going to charge, not extra, they're going to charge you the same.
Yeah.
amount.
It says.
I'm going
My
to,
point is,
Yeah.
I don't want to get into detail of that, because you don't want to waste your time. Yeah, because you know what, I'm not an expert, you have to be absolutely wrong, but there are a number, there are probably a dozen I found in the contract that are like this, that are operational.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think this is, yeah, it needs the point is, I see at least a few months worth of due diligence.
Mhm.
And I think where we are at this point in time, in my opinion, is if this board wants to spend the time and money to do a correct due diligence for this option, that's what needs to be decided, because it's gonna take time and money. And it's gonna be, as I said, legal, operational, and financial. Because I don't wanna pretend to be an expert here, because I'm not. And I don't wanna pretend to be a CPA, I'm not. And I'm not a lawyer either, but I know this is nothing, I've been through this enough times, I know it's gonna take a few months.
sure, and you know, if you folks have questions that you identify in the contract, you can just email me those, but in that situation, Bob, I mean, I'm gonna say that that's called bypass, and it's included
I
in
get
the
it.
tipping rate. I mean, that's pretty common.
It's what they've been doing this entire time.
Yeah.
So our contract can't be any different than the
Well-
contracts that they have with all the other municipalities.
Right.
So, to me, it's operational. They talk about maybe so many months before they get the process operating commercially.
They're gonna bypass during the
Yeah,
whole
I
time.
hope so. I think I read the term 18 months, I'm not sure. Is that right or wrong? You know, if I'm gonna buy something and put risk on the table for our towns, I want that in the contract.
Mhm.
You know, I want to, and by the way, it can be plus and minus, I get it.
Well, you want to specify the questions so that you get the right
Well,
answer.
if I'm
right?
buying something, a piece of equipment, you know, and be delivered in 18 months, I want it in the contract. You know, and for obvious reasons, because 18 months is half this contract. So for half the contract, we're sending stuff to the same place we're sending stuff now. But what if it turns out to be 3 years? I don't want the egg in my face.
Yeah, I mean, I'll
Well,
give
we'll
you,
send it to the same spot we're sending it now.
I'll give you another example. So when we went to Eco Maine,
Yep.
Eco Maine's contract says something similar. It says, you know, in the summer months when we start getting into high generated waste volumes for the summertime, we're gonna take the waste and we're gonna landfill it.
Yep.
Okay, in our own landfill, and then when business slows back down, we're gonna dig it up out of the landfill, and then we're gonna put it through the facility.
Sure.
That was part of that contract. If you read that, you're like, what's that all about? But that's just them storing it, and then them taking it back out, but they didn't charge you anything different.
And again, it's not about the money, it's just about what the bells and whistles of this contract. That's what we're trying to track. It is a draft of a new contract from an attorney who did a good job, by the way. It's one-sided, of course, what would you expect, anything else? But the due diligence we do is not just a lawyer.
Yeah.
And by the way, and I'm not an expert like this guy is with balance sheets and P&Ls, but I gotta tell you, that I have a lot of questions on the financials too. And we should have, maybe even an opinion letter from an accountant that says, you know, what we're walking into here. Because what we're dealing with here is uncertainty.
Mhm.
And I'm simplistically, in my mind, the uncertainty of going with MWC for very good reasons, by the way. It's the right thing, it's the way of the future, I hope. But versus the certainty, and maybe half of that uncertain term, we're in no different shape than we are today environmentally.
Except for a lot of the waste during this whole period from the MRC members has gone to PERC and not. So when there has been a superior option available, it hasn't all of their waste, unlike our waste that has exclusively gone to a landfill. Some of the member municipalities wanted to go to PERC instead. And so when that's been operational, they've been able to do that, which.
Yes, and that's all well and good. It puts all of the control in their hands, and that's another uncertainty. And I'm not, at our size of our towns, and collectively 6,000 tons, is not Los Angeles. You know, this is a relatively modest amount, relatively modest sized towns. The uncertainty is high, and when the uncertainty is high, I'd like to see more due diligence.
I don't know, I agree. I mean, I think you're right, Bob. We gotta do due diligence, and I think you point out a good part of that contract, and there should be like a question or maybe a change in the contract that says, you know, no matter where the waste goes, this is what your tipping rate is,
Yeah.
regardless if it's bypass
Yeah,
or if it's going through the facility.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
you know, at no point in time, or what conditions could cause the tipping rate to change outside of the contract? That would be another good question.
Lots, you're hitting it on the head. Yeah.
Right, so you want to ask those questions, and you want to maybe tweak the contract to say those things if you get further along in the process and you think this is, all right, this looks like what we want to do, but we don't like these things.
Yeah, but a lot of these things,
Yeah.
it's negotiation. And if you don't like the negotiation, it's gonna make a decision for
Exactly, I
you, right?
agree,
So it's
but
not.
you gotta ask the question too.
Right, there's others like that.
I agree.
can give those to you.
So that's why you guys are here, and, you know, if you can look through this for me, and I have my own things that I want to kind of clarify,
Oh.
but I think that it's important that you, because everybody's looking at this from a different vantage point. You're really, you got expertise in one or several areas, right? And you're gonna point things out. Mike's gonna see other things.
Sure.
Eric's gonna see other things, and
Yeah.
that's what makes the board work.
Yeah,
And
I
if
agree.
you guys all find things wrong with this, or questions, we write them down, we put them in front of them. We don't like the answers, we move on to the next step, right? I think that's kind of what makes sense to me.
Why are you laughing?
She's looking really standing there with her hand up in the air, under protection.
He was, I was
reading.
waiting, he was letting you finish. Because Bob's always so quick to call on me whenever he's.
Oh, I turn the other way.
Sure, yes, due diligence and all of that stuff, but if we're gonna expend too much energy on that, we might as well just not even go that route, because the benefit of going with the MRC is being in a cooperative with other municipalities whose interests are at least theoretically, and much more likely, a lot more than theoretically, aligned with ours. So it's the people setting the.
We're different class of members.
Sure, but there are other members that will be like
Like us.
us. So they're trying to bring on, you've got the joining members and then all of that stuff. So they generally, you know, there are going to be other towns in our class, and they do want more people to join because it makes them more powerful in the long run. That's why EcoMean is working so well, because they've got all of those towns. They are working together as a collective bargaining unit. If the difference with waste management is that it is just, you know, it's just us in waste management, and yeah, we can negotiate back and forth with them, and they have the right to give us a contract that's different than the rest. But if the benefit of rejoining the MRC is that some of that due diligence happens through members that we elect to the board. So that's not totally clear to me, like what kind of, you know, representation rights we might have at this point. But if we'll end up undoing the benefit of being part of it if we feel the need to do too much due diligence. I guess I'm saying we should ask them to do. They've already done a lot of this, like the questions and answers for member municipalities, and
They have other members, not joining members.
yes, and they have all, you know, there are these board meetings that are just like ours, and people from all the different towns grill them on, you know, because they get upset about everybody's like us, you know, they don't want to have to pay more, they want to make sure they're getting questions from their residents. So they've been through a lot of this, and
The only diligence that I'm referring to is we have a contractual relationship with this entity. That is the diligence we need to work on. That I doubt, unless they're gonna share XYZ town's contract, this contract is brand new.
they're basically, and they hurried it along in some ways for us.
So we're the first. So we're the first. And in this contract, it's adjoining members, which strange name for the charter members, frankly, but adjoining members a lot of clout because they have, what, 10% of the ownership in this facility? And that's one of the main differences between us. So the diligence we need to do is individual. We represent 4 towns, and we need to do diligence on this contract. And I don't think there's any other contract that exists of this draft yet. We'll be the first.
Yeah, that's the impression I got, was that they wrote this specifically as their first one.
Yeah, but
Outside of that.
it's a short point.
They had that all set up, that whole framework was all set up for the other thing too, though.
Yeah.
But I think what it is that this company has just finalized the purchase of the whole organ.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, you're right, I mean, somebody's gonna have to be the first, right? And I don't wanna be, I don't generally like being first either, but.
Honestly, if Belfast is somebody else was sending their solid waste, they're gonna negotiate on their own contract. They don't care what the Midfield Solid Waste Corporation does.
They're gonna keep this contract for any of the other people in the same situation as
Yeah,
us.
yeah.
Everybody will be in the same boat, per se. So
But we will negotiate depending on our lawyer, our accountant.
we could be in a better position too, being the first, because we could, you know,
Could possibly.
and, I mean, I'm gonna just say one thing. I'm gonna do whatever the board wants to do, right? And I have no preference, because my preference is whatever your preference is. So whatever you guys end up wanting to do, but I will say, there's risk no matter where you go, because if you just watched the news the other day, Waste Management is under the gun in New Hampshire right now
Yeah.
because of the increased rain
Yeah.
and the hydrogen sulfide levels. And
Yeah.
the whole town is coming out of the woodwork.
Right.
And they had to put millions of dollars into the operation to cover it with plastic and collect it and flare off the gas.
Mhm.
And somebody's gonna pay for that.
But to my point,
You know,
we could be in the same boat if their
I
18
agree.
months doesn't hold.
Right.
Because I don't believe it will. I've never seen technology that goes on schedule, unfortunately. We could be 2/3 or 3/4 of the way this contract, we'd be in the same boat we are today.
We have a responsibility to make sure we look this over as best we can. We use all the tools that we have to make sure that it's safe and it's a viable option for the people that are paying for this.
Yeah.
This is our obligation.
But exactly, I mean, it's what, I was not aware of that with Waste Management, but there is, all of that risk is with Waste Management too, is with the landfill. Like, that we have no, it says that they just make it very abundantly clear in their contract, if any of our costs go up, we're gonna pass that along to you,
Sure.
with no limits, so it's,
Well, according to this contract, you face some of the same things.
I'm
So,
sure,
well, it's not quite.
Right.
But my point is, the point I'm trying to make to the board is what Dave just said, that the board really needs to decide to put in the time and the due diligence to this contract. It's operational, and I don't know, Eric, what's your opinion about having an opinion letter on the financials? I see stuff in the financials that bother me.
Yeah, there's some issues that are a little odd. I'm not seeing, the cash is definitely going the wrong direction for one.
Yeah,
So, you know.
But they haven't turned a consistent
No,
positive corner yet.
Well, they haven't started, I don't think, I mean, they've only been doing it for what? I mean, what's the beginning and the,
How many years?
Yeah, well, they started out audited in January of '21, so.
right, but I mean, that,
Yeah, it's,
I mean, the company didn't own it then.
they didn't know until this year.
Yeah,
Right.
so I mean, you can't really.
I know,
No, but it's financials don't,
but
no.
we need to,
It's like an IPO.
The point is, it's a very convoluted balance sheet.
it's really not,
Yeah,
because
it is
the
very
worst case
messy.
scenario is what we're doing right now.
Right?
Like,
Yeah, but you know,
that's the backup option, what we're doing right now. So the worst thing that can happen is that we can spend more to do the same thing,
it wind up in a bad place.
the place we are now.
No, I disagree with that statement.
Maybe what we need to ask, should think of some questions for Bill, like, can you paint for us what you see as the worst case scenario with this contract? Or like, what are the actual things that could go wrong?
It's default, and we have to go back to the market. That's what the worst case for this contract is.
No, that would mean we would go straight to Norwich Walk.
Well, wherever it is, whatever the market demands is where we go.
They have a contract with Norwich Walk.
Yeah, I'm saying.
Well, so I'm saying, let's ask Bill,
No,
let's
no.
ask an attorney what the worst case scenario is, or we could ask you.
Whatever it is, MRC, go, according to the contract, can go default. It got its own volition, meaning they declare bankruptcy, just like what happened with Fiber Rock.
Right.
MRC didn't declare bankruptcy though, but Fiber Right did, sure.
They can, according to this contract, do the same thing. And if that happens, everything's out, where we don't have any contract, you're slave to the market to send your solid waste.
No, there's the backup contract with, I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and argue with you about it. There is we'd be in the same boat as as 150 other main towns. Waste management could also implode.
Sure, anybody can implode, but the uncertainties associated with waste management are minutiae compared to the uncertainty.
But the waste management is the built-in backup for the MRC. That's all, that's a contract.
Actually, I don't agree with you.
Okay, well, so that's a good example of a question.
If they get contracts with waste management, they owe them money too, they're gonna be part of the whole lawsuit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's not the way bankruptcy courts work.
So do we want to ask an attorney, or do we want to, I guess, maybe we have all the information we need now to know? Like, I'm saying, let's ask the attorney whether, like, shouldn't we know what the legal opinion is on the worst case scenario for multiple options?
Back to my point, this is one item that I brought up about a dozen. It's gonna take a lot of time and a lot of money. And that's what the board has to decide to do. That was my point I made up front. Do we want to spend the time and money to do the due diligence and possibly go with MRC or not? It's gonna take months.
And you don't believe that we need to do any due diligence to go with, you want to sign a 10-year contract with Waste Management and just call it good?
I'm saying, I got two options in front of me. One option is it's easier to make a decision on, less uncertainty. This one is laced with uncertainty for good objectives. And it's gonna take months to get to the point where I even begin to feel safe with this option.
And you're not concerned about the uncertainty of what's happening in New Hampshire with Waste Management?
It's far more manageable. I don't see Waste Management going bankrupt.
No, they aren't. They're everywhere.
Sorry. You know what, they have a name and reputation nationally and internationally. Yeah.
So the backup contract for every single MRC member is Waste Management. So that's, I think, the question that we need.
So if we can answer the one question of, if we went with this and it fails, is Waste Management still going to take our waste without us having to start a brand new contract with them at the market?
You'd have to start a brand new contract.
I don't believe that's the legal opinion of.
Sorry, I disagree.
I think what you want to know is what the contract is between MRC and Waste Management.
But
Because that's going to tell you where they're going to
But
go.
if MRC has a contract to supply anything, and they go bankrupt, it's dead in the water. All those contracts are in the courts.
Yeah, the court would decide.
Well, that's MWS would go bankrupt, right? MRC is separate from that.
Right.
Exactly.
So what you want to know is what will happen to the MRC members if MWS fails?
Yes.
What's the contingency?
We don't have a relationship with MRC.
Well,
We're in this contract, we have no relationship with MRC.
we're what do they call it? Charter,
Joining members.
joining members.
We would,
No, we're not joining members. Joining members are owners of the facility. We don't have any of that. This is a
We
separate.
have no ownership in MRC.
Correct.
Right.
This is a separate class.
So that's the question, is like, do joining members
Yeah.
We're
have the
not-
same rights as members?
Okay, so you get the answer to that,
Yeah.
then we gotta answer the operational questions, and I believe that's the question of the board. Do you want some financial surety, what this operation looks like or not?
Well, I think the first point is just it looked over legally to decide on these couple of major points, because if those fail, then there's no point in even going further. I don't want to spend money that we don't need to spend if we can't get through the legal aspects of it in the beginning.
We end up where we are anyway.
And
Right,
that's a good
I mean,
point.
we have a waste management contract available, and hopefully it doesn't change by the time we make a decision on this one.
Right.
I mean, that's my major concern, is they've been pushing us to sign since, what, May or June?
Well, they haven't been pushing us.
I know, but initially, their initial comment
Yeah, it
was,
was June
we have
30.
30 days to
No,
sign
waste
waste
management.
management.
Oh, yeah, yes, you're right, yes.
So, I mean, the longer we keep stalling, the more
I mean, I'm
likely
hoping
it is.
Pete's
rate's
probably watching this, and I'm hoping, he's gonna keep an open mind, and,
Well, that's a good point, that's my point of risk. The risk to that is, yeah, this is not gonna, we're not gonna have answers to these in 1 month.
Right.
It's gonna take time, and to your point, you can do it sequentially, of course, but that takes longer. But that's probably a smart move.
Yeah, I don't really think we wanna send it out to legal and
No.
everybody else and, and accounting and all this other stuff. Well, we can look at it as a board, come back with
Right.
some questions, and if we have way too many questions, then I think it's just not worth it. I mean, I'd much rather see more of the waste go to recycling and not into a landfill personally. Especially with the big waste that the hotels and the restaurants make around here, I see it.
Mhm,
Those buckets and containers, it's a lot of plastic that's just going into the ground.
mhm.
But then again, I was watching a video from Canada the other day where, their big recycling facility is like, oh, we recycle everything. Where do they put it? In an incinerator.
That's what Europe counts as recycling.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh, Europe recycles 90%. No,
It
they
goes in an
call that,
incinerator.
but it makes electricity.
Yeah,
I think
But-
Eric's right.
I think if we go with your point and say,
By this man plan.
let's everybody look at this and make that determination. If he says it passes muster, then we can look a little further, but I don't wanna put off this waste management contract much more.
I do see what you're saying, Bob, about the contract, and I don't know why I didn't see this part. It's with Municipal Waste Solutions and not with the MRC.
Yeah.
So that's a very central point. If the contract were with the MRC, that's what I'm advocating for. And I don't know why I didn't notice that, but that's sort of the central point, I guess.
And I was just trying to put beyond the legal day, I just kind of falls in your court a little bit, or somebody's, that, like I said, that they're talking about 18 months for, shipping it elsewhere. Well, what's the point?
What's the point?
What's the point? What's the guarantee?
I mean,
It means nothing to us. Because we're paying the same amount, we're saying it's the same place, we could be for 3 years.
Right.
Maybe, hopefully not, maybe it's 12 months, but see, we have to test that as part of the contractual negotiation.
Yeah, I'd feel more comfortable if they were actually up and running the way they were intending to run, more than playing in the startup phase.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for the bigger recycling, don't get me wrong on that
Yeah, me
point,
too.
because I hate throwing those plastic things away. But, I don't know.
I think
So-
another avenue might be like to talk to Maine Municipal, because I think Maine Municipal must have a legal opinion of this at this point too, so we have our own attorney. Maine Municipal's free,
That's true.
and it's
That's a good point.
it's an opportunity to have somebody else that's looking at it collaboratively of all the municipalities out there and say, what's the risk level? It's just another tool for you to kind of,
That's a good idea, that's, I
You know,
hadn't thought of
I
that.
agree that there are some business points that I think, I feel adamant about.
you want to be ethical.
Well,
Yeah.
of course, but,
Yeah.
they won't accept something that says there's a schedule in this thing. Then that tells me something real quickly.
Well, like you said, I think you're valid. If you say that, we're gonna have a 3-year contract, and in 3 years they never get up and running, I mean, you're right, what's the point?
Give me some money back.
It's not a 3-year contract.
Yeah, these are both 3-year contracts.
Yeah, they're both 3 year.
With 3-year renewals, I think is what it is.
Yeah.
The last one was 3.
So, I mean, if we look this over and decide it's not good, well, in 3 years, there's still an opportunity to play with this again.
But that's why we're here, right? We're
That's-
here
so-
to look at every option.
I think Eric put a pin on everything.
So
I mean, the
is
thing is that none of this ever gets solved. No town in Maine, or no group of 4 towns this size is big enough to influence anything. And so that's why the only solution is working together to collectively negotiate. And when each little entity like us decides, well, we're just gonna wait and see and let everybody else figure out the future.
well, I'm not really saying that, though, I'm just saying, that's our optional direction. But in the meantime, let's take a month and have legal look at this and decide if there's enough points
Yeah.
that make it not feasible to move forward. I don't wanna spend
Yeah,
time with accounting and all that other stuff, because when it gets to the accounting point, well, I can do a review, or we can get somebody else to do a review on it, and we can go through that. That's fine, but the legal point, I don't know enough about to make a
I mean,
determination.
I think you're right, that if the, I mean, for example, if they're not willing to have the contract be with the MRC and not Municipal Waste Solutions, that even for me would be like, okay, well then, never mind.
And you
so-
don't,
And if I was them, I wouldn't, honestly, if I was them, I wouldn't do that, because I think that they're setting up a second level class of users, and that's us, we're not joining it. So, I think I'd be excited if you were joining a member.
They do already have multiple classes.
Hmm?
They do already have multiple classes of
Right.
members.
Right.
And I'm not gonna go in, I
Right.
can't remember the details well enough, but,
well, we should ask the question.
right, these are,
But a perfect analogy of this, and Bob's right here, is that, I think, is that it's like the police union, right? The police union has a guaranteed contract that says you're gonna get this much money and you pay, but salary employees don't have that contract, but we usually get what the police union gets, but not always. So you're always like not fully part of the union per se. You're not part of the union at all, but you tend to get some of the benefits of being, that the
Right.
union gets. It's almost identical. It's very similar. You know what I mean?
is it that, maybe, but
It is.
I don't think we know enough about the contract to know.
I don't know, do we really need any kind of motion on this, or just make a direction to say, let's look at legal and move forward, if everybody's good with that?
I think there's been some good questions, some basic questions.
The first thing you should ask, anybody has any questions, submit them.
Yes.
And then to your point,
Yeah.
it's just, and then what you do with the contract, that the lawyer talks to their lawyer, whatever they do, that's gonna develop some information.
I agree.
But the least of which is some language, exactly, if they don't wanna put this in the contract, then I'm not interested.
Yeah, so, wanna put a 1-week time frame on this, so you can get answers? On comments, that's what I'm saying, it's from us,
Definitely.
would a week or 10 days be sufficient for us to get back to Dave?
This
so
is
that we
really
can move forward?
important, so
Yes.
please give me some questions, because this is, you all have a good point of view, and I really want to ask the
Perfect,
question.
that's perfect.
All right, so we can move on?
Only you.
All right, I'm leaving.
I think that was a good discussion, though.
I'm out of here. All right, so the proposal from the leachate management specialists on the wetland evaluation. Do you want to talk about this, Allison, or do you want to talk about it, or?
We did review it with the finance, we had a small finance committee meeting.
Didn't we discuss last week?
We did.
We did, but we didn't have an actual proposal.
We wanted, the action was to get a proposal. We got a proposal, we reviewed it with the finance committee, there was some questions on,
Some wording.
and we wanted to get the fatal flaws answered in the beginning, not towards the end.
Oh, I see.
So he revamped the contract to basically,
It's in here.
Mhm.
yes, to deal with the negotiation of the questioning with DEP first. So if DEP says, no, can't do it, we're done at that point. We don't go on to the 30,000 and all, you know what I mean? And that cost was nominal to do that part of it.
It was.
Yeah, just a couple, $2,000.
But that was later in the contract, the other way, it was further on down, so we would have spent the other money first and drew up some nice plans and then found out we couldn't do it, the other way.
It's a total,
It's flipped around.
Comes up to 35, I believe.
35 even.
But it was only 2,000.
2,000.
2,000
For
for
the
the,
total worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario is
Because you're
30,000.
looking for approval of the proposal, which includes 35.
Right.
potentially.
correct. And we pulled the plug right at the beginning if we didn't get very far.
The worst case scenario is actually the best case scenario, because that would mean that they thought it was all viable and,
Right,
that it's
Yeah.
worth spending that money to
yeah.
do it.
30,000 to save millions is
I
a
move we accept the proposal for $35,000.
very good move.
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
And this is gonna tell us whether we can move forward with this leachate. I think it's money well spent. Really.
Yep.
We've been talking about it for a while.
Hundreds of
Yeah.
thousands of dollars.
Because at this current level, we're looking at about $300,000
Yeah.
in leachate just in this coming year.
Yeah.
At least.
especially with all this rain we've had.
Right now, yeah.
Yeah.
Shit, I know.
So, I mean, theoretically, this could cost us about 50 to 75,000 a year for operational
I think they said it was gonna be a little less than that.
Right, I think around 50, so I was just saying.
Worst case.
75, you know,
Call it 100.
yeah, even at 100,000, it's a lot better than 300, you know.
Not to mention, we're gonna have to, the PFAS stuff, I do think that we should ask them to be thinking about how PFAS could be incorporated into this, because we know that, I'm not sure if we've talked about this already, but in this group, but the Camden wastewater treatment plant had to do testing of their leachate for PFAS for like 6 months, but this facility, or the landfill, has been doing it for 2 years, testing the leachate for PFAS, and in the landfill, we're averaging around 1,000 parts per trillion, and Camden is averaging, in the effluent, is averaging around 75 parts per trillion. That's still, 75 is still putting us in the list of the top,
You're in the
some of the top
10 or-
emitters.
Wow.
So DEP is now gonna say, okay, Camden has to go through this process of trying to identify what some of the main sources are, and that's gonna be fairly easy to figure out.
Yeah, we know the sources.
So it's only a matter of time before we're gonna end up having to do some of our own pre-treatment anyway. We might as well just say, you know, because it's almost like if we treat it for PFAS, we're gonna be treating it
Yeah.
well up to the brink, practically.
So just to add to that, we've been asked at the wastewater treatment facility now to begin testing, doing some sampling for PFAS randomly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then the second thing is that Vera, project manager for DEP, gave me a timeline, and they first started with just saying we want these quarterly PFAS tests, which are the 1,000 parts per trillion.
Yeah.
But now they're saying, okay, we want to know how much water you're pumping. And what they're doing is they're giving this information to the legislature
So
to make rules.
So they know where it's being dumped.
They want to make rules, and they're going to say, this will get into legal now, they'll create a law, and it's going to say, if you emit this much or whatever. So one of the things that I think I put it in my manager's report, but I'm going to have Bill Kelly file a lawsuit against DuPont. No, class action lawsuit, because we have documentation of PFAS contamination in the landfill caused by the manufacturer of PFAS. And most places haven't been testing for PFAS because
That lawsuit already exists.
The state,
The class action suit already exists.
we're gonna do one independently, and this is my thought process on this. It's worth a try, because it's not gonna cost us much to do it. But if we get in early on this, because one of the few places that have already been doing the testing, we can show that it's harmed the town and the operation by contaminating the landfill, because there's something called cradle to grave. And if you contaminate a site, you're responsible for it. And before they go and change their name and file bankruptcy, you might get some reimbursement to put in treatment or these kinds of things. There's nothing lost here.
No.
It's worth doing, because I'm pretty sure we're gonna be on the front end of this. And you know how these work, right? If you're on the front end, you might get a little something. It's worth a try, because we get a little money out of it, and they can put in a treatment facility to correct it, because that might be what they're required to do it by law.
it's already happening in other
Yeah.
states. Some
This isn't
individual
something-
towns have gone, like the state's doing their thing, but then individual towns have,
Well, there's some individual towns who have told people do not use potable water from faucet.
Right. So,
right, we're not there yet, but.
You know.
All right,
all right.
so we have a motion and a second, so all those in favor of approving this contract?
Unanimous.
Unanimous again. Excellent. Hopefully that will come out positive.
Yeah, close to.
Let's see, and then the discussion on the sale of the chipper and the fire truck.
So, there's several people that are expressed interest in buying the chipper. It's sitting in the corner.
Yeah.
We don't have any staff that can run the thing. It's dangerous. We've already had one lawsuit filed against us because somebody got hurt by using this piece of equipment. It's old. It needs a lot of money put back into it to get it operational again, and it's just not worth it. It costs us a couple $1,000s a year to chip all the wood we have, and it costs us 10 times that to run that piece of equipment. It's the baddest investment that you would make if you want to run that thing right now.
Well, they start tearing themselves apart when they burn down.
Right, and they're just, anything that grinds
Yeah.
is not worth, I mean, it's just a lot of wear parts and a lot of costs. And you gotta have a mechanic, you basically have to have a full-time mechanic to run the thing, so.
And a fire truck to pull it around.
It's almost silly, it's almost silly, and if we can let it sit there and rot and make believe that we like it, and we can put a wreath on it and do whatever else we want, but we probably ought to get rid of it.
Take it to the snowball and put it with
Policy for,
Yeah, I don't think there's any like surplus equipment or, you know, fixed asset release, yeah, so policy and like approval to allow the acceptance of bids on these two pieces of equipment, and then when I get the sealed bids, we'll decide at that point if we're ready to take what we're offered for these pieces of equipment.
$1.
And then we can use that money for some of the other things that we actually need to do.
so the process would be bids, value bids bring to the board or to you?
I mean, that's all up to you. If you feel if you want to give me the authority to make the decision on whether or not highest bid wins.
I'd
No.
give that fire truck to anybody that's willing to pull it out of there.
Thank
It
you.
runs, that thing
You know,
runs.
somebody's gonna want that.
Yeah, yeah, and
Oh,
you
yeah.
know,
It's
there's,
actually a nice truck.
yeah, there's a guy out in Hope that
Yes.
rehabs them,
Yes.
and he's got all
Oh.
sorts, so,
Colonel
you
thought
know,
about it.
even if
The
he
Red
wants
Rock one, I'm saying.
$10.
For race car.
There you go.
Andy Swift, give it to him to lug it off.
Yeah, right.
All right,
Listen,
so-
it's got value, trust me.
It really
No,
does,
it
yeah.
does.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
It
does.
does, it has a lot of value, believe it or not.
I have video, it's been
It's
running
like an
recently.
antique.
Yeah.
It's pretty
If
cool.
you're contemplating a policy.
It's not like it probably
That camel
is.
style.
If you're contemplating a policy, I would suggest to the board that we write a policy that allows you to bid out, you know, to get bids and
Yeah.
your discretion
Yeah.
to decide whether you need to get the board's input, because what if you had 3 charities coming at you, you know, you might not want to do it yourself, well, let you do it.
I think that should just come to the board like everything does. That chipper is actually worth quite a lot of money. That it's too expensive of a thing. Not that I'm not saying I don't trust you or
You don't
whatever.
trust me, do you?
I just think that it's gonna, I think there are multiple people that are gonna want it, and that it's, with that kind of a thing, we always, all the select boards, it always comes, you know, that this is the bid, it comes to the select board, I don't think there's any situation where it's just gonna be like, well, only one person wanted it, and it was just obvious. I think it's gonna be easier on you, actually, just to bring it to the board and let us decide.
Personally, I say I bring the bids to the board, and I say, this is the high bid, you guys okay with it? And you say yes or no, and that's it.
Yeah, I was
Right.
gonna say, I think in Hope, we've got a policy where there's a certain dollar amount.
Right, anything
and it's-
over $500 usually.
Yeah, or, you know, 1,000, whatever.
It's 1,000 now.
You know, the board has to approve if it's a relatively small change, the administrator can do it.
Mhm.
So it probably would be wise to have a parallel something
Yeah.
that, because then it frankly covers everybody. There
Mhm.
can be, you know, no allegations of favoritism or anything
I agree.
else.
Yep.
So it distributes.
You can, the only difference, and I would agree with that, that the municipality, everything's publicly owned.
Yeah.
The situation is not that way,
Mhm.
but we can still do that.
We actually fall under all the same rules about that, because
Yeah.
That's okay.
We could look at the 2 policies for, like, the 2, 3, 12, 4 towns must have a policy.
we don't really need I think in this case,
I think
we
it's
don't need a
just-
policy right
just-
now. We
yeah.
just need to follow a reasonable process. The only thing you're selling on a regular basis are bicycles and recycling.
Yeah.
This is a big item that falls out of our normal.
Can I make a motion that we allow Dave to go ahead and put these two items out to bid, bring them back to us at the next meeting, and thereafter we can look into writing a policy if we decide we need one?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor?
So,
The minimum was,
There you go.
Mike, you gonna buy that chipper?
Yep. I got my bid already in my mind.
What, the chip?
Yeah.
All righty, so,
Business.
Yeah.
Actually,
Financials.
the town
What would
Rockport-
Stephen
the town
King
Rockport
do
could
with
use that.
this?
We got a big brush pile to take care of now.
you can drag it over to my
gosh.
house and chop up all my dead wood.
That thing is so terrifying.
Yeah.
Financials. We did get a little bit of an update from Jody at our finance committee meeting. Unfortunately, David Kinney and John Duke weren't able to make it. David probably wouldn't have been able to make it anyway, even with more notice, but there wasn't a lot of notice for it, so they weren't there for that, but Jody was able to join us a little bit, and we got an update on the audit, which, as usual, is running later than we would like. The difference with Midco Solid Waste is, as opposed to all the towns, is that our budget is due earlier than the towns, which means we would need really the audit sooner, but Midco Solid Waste always seems to get put to the bottom of the auditing stack, it seems, so.
why? We pay our bills.
We're gonna, one of the things that we're gonna do is review the agreement with Camden for all this goes through Jody. I don't know if this is something that.
Who's Jody?
Sorry, Jody is the finance director for Camden, but she's also Midco Solid Waste.
Stolen from Lincolnville.
That's
Right.
true. Audra does specialize in scoping out talent. But she's very good, trained by David Kinney and others, so she's good. And Midco Solid Waste has a contract with Camden for the accounting and payroll and some of the finance support. She's not the finance director for the corporation. We don't have a finance director. So one of the things that we talked about in the finance committee meeting was some possible, first of all, improvements to the budget template, possibly to make that process a little bit less painful for, any subsequent future manager that comes on or board, and maybe having Jody do a little bit of extra work to help with that. So Jody was going to be get us an overview of what the current responsibilities are in the contract that we have with Camden, so we can all have a better understanding of what's reasonable to be asking of Jody. Is it reasonable to ask her to attend all of our finance committee meetings and help us with the budget the whole time, or is that outside, the scope? But then also figuring out this audit stuff and what's her role with the audit. Do we need to have a just like we have a benchmark in our interlocal agreement for when we expect the budget to be delivered to the towns? Do we need to do that same thing with the audit? Is it just a matter of clearing things up with Jody, or?
Did they give you a schedule for the audit?
No, and so that was Jody, talking to Jody. She had just gotten all of the stuff to the auditor at the time of our meeting, Eric, which was what, a week and a half ago?
Yeah.
It had only been 2 weeks since the auditor had all the stuff. So sort of about to come down hard on the auditor, and then realized, maybe it's on our end.
Were we late getting the stuff to them?
That Jody said, 2 weeks ago, she had gotten all the stuff. So I don't know all the details about why that is, so.
Well, it kind of segues into the why this other item was added, Eric, to the agenda, which is the second item here, which is the schedule.
Right.
Yes.
Because you mentioned two key things. One was the audit's chicken and egg. You can't do, until you get your audit, you really shouldn't, and blah, blah, blah. And the other thing you mentioned was the model, this model we use is Excel model.
Yeah, it's Excel. And
It has, needs work, and then, I don't want to jump past financials, but that's why the second item is on this thing.
Well, exactly, yeah, so, the last email I just wrote to the finance committee, and we can see if, I don't know if there are other people that want to join the finance committee. Brian Powers was, technically the finance committee person from Hope, but, figuring out, Sarah, currently the members of the finance committee are John Duke and David Kinney as town administrators. They're voting members of the finance committee. Sometimes there have been times where town managers have attended all of our board meetings. We got away from that a few years ago because they're still invited to all of the meetings, but there was a quorum requirement that if we didn't have two town managers here, we didn't have a quorum. So it was like, we needed two babysitters in order to have a Midco Solid Waste meeting. And we thought that we should, as a board, be allowed to make the decision to meet without them some. But it does get hard during budget time to get everybody's schedules to align, and for them to, not being at all of our meetings, to then have enough knowledge to participate in the finance committee. So anyway, but they have so much knowledge about budget development in general.
Would a Hope representative have to be somebody from the select board? Could it be someone other than Sam from the town office? Because what I'm looking at is that you don't want me on a finance committee.
Chelsea.
That was exactly what I was thinking, is that, I know many things, but I don't know finance. And so I would not be a productive person on that committee. But our finance person, Chelsea, she's amazing. And since getting the bookkeeper's job, she's gone back to school to work on her MBA. And so she's really good at that. And so I don't know if
Shore bylaws at this point, and that's one of the things that we probably need to look at in the future. But it's all of our committees are made up of board members or ex officio board members, which are the town managers. But I agree with you, that has been a barrier for us in the past, trying to populate all of our committees with the busiest people.
Yeah, and she's really busy, I know that. But I don't have I can't look at this stuff, even, 3 years down the line, if I'm still here, and I've got experience and know how these things work. The things that you were talking about earlier about the contract and, the legal and the operational and the, things that we need to look at and evaluate, I'm kind of going, I am so close. But I think truly.
You'll be fine, just look away.
That's right, that's right.
But, and learn, but it's a learning curve, and so are finances, so let's try,
You don't
Honestly,
have to be
though,
a
it's
a finance expert. You're gonna be, it's just important that you understand where the money's being spent.
yeah.
And we go through that, and you'll ask questions. Sometimes the best questions are asked by people that don't know finance.
It's a great learning tool.
Yeah, it's
really not that, I'm not a finance guru either, but the idea is what the finance committee does is, make it partially to help get things ready for the board. So looking over a budget and saying, oh, this doesn't make sense, or that doesn't make sense, is part of it. And, frankly, there aren't enough finance gurus anywhere to only populate the finance committee with finance people. So a lot of it is just looking over, sometimes we make recommendations on, like, contracts. Like, we read over the leachate management stuff and said, we need something in there that says, you know, that we're not gonna spend all the money if it's not gonna work. It's just another set of eyes, and some of it is just saying, let's try to spend more on this or less on this, or, and also the requirement is, like, every committee, I think it still says this in our bylaws, is supposed to have a member from each town. It's kind of unnecessary, like, it's so restrictive that it doesn't allow us sometimes to take the best advantage of
Yeah.
The
It's a
resources.
time crunch
Yeah.
too, it's hard.
It's coordinating everybody's schedules and everything,
For
and,
Sarah's background too, our bylaws, whatever agreement, says we're supposed to submit our budget to the towns in December.
December
Which
31st.
we all discussed many times here, which is ludicrous, because
Yeah.
we don't even have 6 months worth of data in December, never mind. So with last year, the last 2 years, I believe, we just agreed that we would, as it was on the agenda, we would agree to go to January, because most commitments to the towns, they really don't, especially now, don't do the budget until February, March. So that's part of this, but to get to that point is, for the committee, is not that easy sometimes.
Yeah,
And I'm hoping it'll be easier.
because your look back period is terrible, because as Bob said, we only have, if we're lucky, we have the data through for 6 months.
Quarter of them.
Yeah, a quarter and maybe a little more, because even if we're doing it in December, you still don't have December, and you may probably only have that first quarter and maybe October,
Yeah.
because everything's always 45 days behind.
Yeah,
So your really look back period is almost 18 months, so you're
Yeah,
kind of
so-
looking back into what happened last year to do next year's budget,
yeah.
which makes it complicated because,
Yeah.
you know,
And some things are seasonal,
yeah,
and, you know, you haven't gotten through the season
Definitely,
where you've got higher expenses.
that's true.
Which is what-
Sometimes you end up paying things at the end of the fiscal year and the next fiscal year, and you don't capture that. That can get tricky too.
yeah,
Are we still shooting for a January budget?
I would think so.
yeah, I mean, there is a lot of it that we can do now, especially
Yeah.
now, Dave's going into his second year
Yeah.
of doing it. It's such a painful process for each new manager to
Yeah.
realize that, oh, you have to calculate the assessments, and it's a lot more than just a department head budget. But I think that mostly, as we're moving to more of a, trying to move to or stick with a user fee system, it depends, the idea is that we're not sending the towns like radically different assessments, that, you know, we're trying to keep our fees up high enough so that we're not doing what they used to do, which is all of a sudden quadruple the town's assessments. And I think that's why they put it in the interlocal agreement, that they needed it so soon, was because of that shock.
Is the physical model being worked on now?
That's one of the things that we need to resolve, and we're either gonna have Jody or Eric
I see.
help with this. Eric said he's busy, but
Yeah.
that spreadsheet, we can get through another year with it, but I'd really like to have something clean to work with, because
So Jody can set up the template for the year. It's rather than just handing, there are a few things that can be sped up, like without that much work. Last year, we just handed it to Dave, last year's budget, and without any back, there are all
Without
these,
any warning.
right, and there are all these convoluted
Oh my God.
formulas, and,
it was a
You know,
booby trap.
And that's,
right.
And why wouldn't it be? We've been, we had been 3 years on, 2 years with a manager that didn't know budgets.
It was such,
It was an awful nice guy, but so you gotta,
And then, no, that's one thing, but the framework of that budget has all this hidden stuff from like 20 years.
yeah.
It's all these
And it's
hidden
like-
columns and,
You're like, you do something and something happened over there, like, where'd that come from? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
And
It's
the-
like haunted.
Well, the problem is those kind of,
oh, it was like, whoa.
well, those type of spreadsheets, unfortunately, when you go and add an additional column to add a year, all your formulas kind of go.
Yeah, there's like
So
six.
you have to make sure, and if you forget to adjust one stupid formula, the whole thing could be wrong.
Yeah.
And that's where the problems start, with these kind of spreadsheets.
That's how the school got in trouble.
So we've had manager after new manager sort of trying to patch this up themselves, and like getting it to the point where it works, but then it doesn't, none of it carries over, and,
Yeah.
It's not
Those
user friendly.
spreadsheets.
yeah,
It's
it's,
just,
I've done a lot of budgets, and that, it's a hard budget, it's just that
Yeah, the
spreadsheet
spreadsheet
is
is,
so convoluted.
it's.
but then, and then it
too all over
calculates all the
place.
assessments too, it has this extra stuff that, so that's why we need to figure out, wasn't sure,
Over cells.
you know, is it reasonable to ask
There's a lot of
Jody?
hidden stuff all over the place.
Is it reasonable to ask Jody to fix all this, within the current contract that we have with Camden? You know, how much time is it gonna take? What do we wanna do? But,
I mean, I think I can get through it this year a lot
No,
easier than
don't
last
say
year, but it wasn't pleasant, and I don't think it'll be pleasant again. It's just,
Well,
it's
maybe.
really.
What do the towns use? I mean, obviously the towns aren't doing it this way.
they are actually kind of, but
Really?
that's
Yeah,
what we
it's
can,
almost the same format, but it's the hidden
That's
formulas.
controlled by one person. right?
Yes.
It's there all the time, forever. And that's different, because we change people quite often, in my years with the Midco Solid Waste and new, board directors, new operations, it's, a lot gets lost in translation.
Jim used to refuse to send the Excel version of the budget to anybody else, and I remember thinking it was so controlling of him.
No.
And
Uh-uh.
now I realize
Safe.
that it's just, because he says, no, you get all these different versions out there, and I understand exactly what he means.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we've had no other choice a few times where we've had a manager leave right in the middle of the process or something, and then it's been like, all right, it's shared I'm gonna set up a shared document, and John Duke and David Kinney and whoever else can all look at the online version, and, you know, we've learned a lot, but.
And mark it up.
All right. Any questions on any of the year-to-date finances or the potential?
Look pretty good.
We're doing a
Sorry, yes.
Okay.
Just basic things. I learned the hard way or the slow way on the select board that I really need to pay attention to this stuff. And I noticed that, for example, on the aging summary, is it just sort of routine in the way that Camden Public Works processes their bills and checks, that there are so many sort of past due amounts?
That would be me, that's totally responsible for that, but I mean, no, I don't, well, we have had the person in the finance department out. And-
Okay.
Good point.
And
you got some problems, Dave.
And I know I've approved my own,
Sorry.
I know that I've approved my own invoices that I've been given, so I'd have to check with Beth on it, but
But,
So why isn't Camden paying its bills?
Camden's behind again, it's just
no, I mean,
That's
if it's something that's usual and then, you know.
not usual. I
Okay.
think, let me look into that.
Okay, I mean, I'm just curious,
Yeah, no,
because,
I mean, I can show you the invoices that have been approved.
yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
You know, I believe you, I'm just wondering
But
if this is sort of a
This is
normal.
an inside joke, and
One of Kevin's problems is
What a Camden's
it
problem.
pays his bills too quickly.
Is what?
Too
Pays his
quickly?
bills way too quickly,
Pays its bills too quickly?
way too quickly.
That doesn't seem to be, maybe they've corrected that.
I've seen some of the, well, it's changed since I left the board 3 months ago. It would deal with stuff that's like, why are you paying so quickly? You know, but you're not getting any interest in the bank accounts.
Right.
Yeah.
They're very out.
Yeah, I mean, like, I see Keep Rockport Beautiful roadside was a larger amount.
Yeah.
I think
And-
the other thing too is our bills are higher, you know?
Okay,
So it doesn't take many to look like it's aged quite a bit.
okay,
Get high bills.
yeah, and then what are all of these Z shadow things at the end?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that.
That is what Beth is wanting to clean up from the, I believe those are all the old account,
Yeah.
right?
They need to be written off.
So
So
it's a
she's-
good, can I talk about this? So right now, we're in the, we have some other things from this organization that are kind of lagging. And we have a QuickBooks program that's pretty much obsolete at this point, and we don't even have any, we can't call and have support anymore because they won't support that version. And we're supposed to put a point of service sales system in, to be working, and it's all computerized and works with the scaler and everything, and we've been looking into that, which will allow her to clean all of these things up, but she can't do it right now.
Okay.
She's really frustrated with this.
Yeah, I actually stopped in and,
Yeah.
you know, because I was kind of, my husband usually does the dump, and I was like,
You need to spend time.
check
Right.
or cash? I don't carry either.
No,
Well,
I-
how am I supposed to pay for this?
And if you only, so a little bit of the backdrop was that the prior manager got into an agreement with an organization that basically couldn't care out what they were gonna do. That's
Yeah.
really what happened.
Yeah.
And we had to start over
Yeah.
again. And right now, we're at the point where the credit card, we've finally found, you know, a credit card company, which is basically the state of Maine's system that they use, and we use it to snowball. And it's fairly a reasonable credit card system to use. It's simple. We should have that implemented. I talked with Beth probably around December.
Yeah, and she was telling me that she wanted it, just for the sake of simplicity and bookkeeping, all credit card
Simple.
payments to go into a separate account so that she
Yeah.
can keep it
Yeah.
separate and understand what's coming from where, and,
Right. And then we've been talking with this other company called Creative Information Systems, and they are the ones that did the system I used in Rockland, which is a trash system. It's made for trash. It's called SMS Turbo. And she's got a spreadsheet, and what we were gonna do is at the next finance committee meeting, she's gonna bring those options in, because it is a financial piece. It's dealing with finances. And we wanna kind of run it by the finance committee to talk about, you know, the different options it has and the different costs associated with it, because everything's cloud-based right now, and you don't buy a disk and pop it in your computer and you're done anymore.
You don't even have.
Not-
disk
everything
computers
is
anymore.
subscription, and you have to pay through the nose every year.
Every year, that's the problem, and we're looking at, you know,
All right.
somewhere's around the order of $10,000 to do it, so.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I think we're done with all that. Motion to adjourn then.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? And we'll figure out when to do another meeting.
Well, I would like to, set a finance committee meeting up possibly.
Did you see the email? I wrote an email.
Doesn't take the board to do that.
No, before we leave here though.
Probably all of them want to know what it is so they can
Yeah, I'm
attend,
sure they
Bob.
do. I'm sure they do.
Yeah, I sent out an email asking
Okay.
David Kinney to give a few dates that he could do it, and then I figured we'd try
As long
to.
as we get that out there, I wanna get one of those in before.
David's really helpful. Okay, let me see.
Oh, yeah.
The scheduling of meeting stuff is not my
Nah,
strong point. I like the treasurer stuff,
So
but
you
I,
need to spend more time at the dump.
maybe,
Stop in, don't stay, but stop in.
Yes. No, I've been meaning to, and my feet are still creaky, so,
It was a landfill.
maybe, Sarah, your contribution to
Solid
the
waste
finance committee
facility.
could be scheduling of meetings.
Yeah.
You could just send harassing emails to all of us every few weeks, and
Well, Mike will be
You can
sitting
do
in
what some
our
of my
shorts.
clients do for setting meetings, just set a date and say.
Yeah.
70
"This is when it is."
Yeah, I know, it's
I tried that, I only give that
Yeah.
24-hour notice, was like.
crazy.
are we still